coming in at number one for the first time. It's not Coronation Street in my rankings. It is another street, actually. It is Shortland Street. The New Zealand soap opera comes in at number one. And I think it comes in at number one because I just finally had to embrace the fact that this show is very fast paced. And if you embrace that fact, you can find it rather enjoyable. And when you compare that fact to a lot of these other soap operas that move at a snail's pace, like General Hospital, Young and the Restless, honestly, all of them drag shit out. If you listen to any of the other videos, EastEnders dragging out the Grey storyline, Emmerdale dragging out Nina, Days of Our Lives dragging out the Possession storyline, Bold and the Beautiful getting repetitive, Coronation Street getting a little boring. I had to put Shortland Street at number one, even though I have some problems with it, which I will talk about. It is at least moving, first of all, but also entertaining. We're going to start with the show left off, and that was at the wedding where Tess was stabbed by her mother's abusive, I guess, her stepdad. And yes, they did in fact kill Tess off. And I had a bit of a problem with this because I feel like Tess was a good character and Tess is a liked character. But also, I mean, big ups to the show for killing off a big character in, a rather rough fashion. But I still think that it was done right. They built up the story and that this was the climax. Yes, a character had to die, but they did what they had to do. Now, the other death is more of the death that I have problem with because they killed off a rather big character of Curtis on a spinoff that I barely knew existed, and I didn't watch it. And I know the character of Curtis has not been on the main show much, but I know the character of Curtis from watching Shortland Street sometimes over the past few years. So I just feel like killing off that character on the spin-off show was a bit much. And I get that they're trying to tie it into the main show. We have Esther grieving on the main show. I just find it weird that they kill off a big character on a spin-off. But I guess the show is showing they have no problems killing off characters. But let's get back to Tess's death because I feel like that really brought about the main story for January for Shortland Street. And Shortland Street was only on for a couple of weeks in January, but it was still good enough and fast enough to be better than the rest of these soap operas in January, for sure. So, Tess was marrying Tom, and this all went down at his wedding too. So the aftermath of Tess's death has been rough for Tom. We're getting to see a new side of Tom, the darker side of Tom. He was blaming Shortland Street for Tess's death because of the surgery going wrong. He started drinking a lot. And then his mother came to town because of all of Tom's outbursts. And we are kind of learning a little bit more about the relationship between Tom and his mother and his bad relationship there, his bad relationship with his father. It comes to a point where he kind of gets a bit abusive with his mother, almost strangles her because she's kind of pushing him a little too much when he's going through all of this grief. And so I feel like I've enjoyed this, the aftermath of Tess's death. I mean, it's been done well from Tom's point of view, and we're getting to learn more about his past. It made me kind of appreciate the character of Tom more, where I feel like just before Tom was kind of this character that, yes, made some mistakes and yes, was even making some mistakes with Tess, but we never really got to dive deep into the character, and now we are. The Viliami, Madonna, JoJo triangle is still kind of going on. It's a weaker triangle because I just feel like Viliami isn't really interested in JoJo. He's just with her because she was supposedly pregnant with his child. Also in the storyline, Madonna kind of became JoJo's boss at the hospital. And JoJo kind of just ended up dumping Viliami because she knows he loves Madonna. It wasn't the best, but I mean, it moved fast in January, and I'm appreciating that on Shortland Street right now, just because when comparing it to these other soap operas that don't move, it's a big difference. And another big difference with Shortland Street compared to a lot of other soap operas is they have a lot of LGBTQ stories going on at once. And I've seen a little bit of pushback online about that. There's too much LGBTQ stories. But Hollyoaks did this long ago. Hollyoaks was ahead of the curve compared to most soap operas, where they had basically a whole gay community, and they still kind of do. So I mean, I think at least another soap opera is arriving into the 2020s, if you will. I mean, Hollyoaks did this in the 2000s is when they started this. So they were way ahead of the curve compared to a lot of this other soap operas, especially the American soap operas, like I've talked about, being stuck in the goddamn 70s. So Shortland Street doing a lot of LGBTQ storylines in January, I think works, and I'm glad that they are with the modern times, because I do feel like that is a thing that holds most of these soap operas back, in that they just haven't been able to evolve with the times. They did it in the 70s and 80s and 90s, but since the 2000s they just stopped, and I don't know why, but they did. The biggest one for me is Samira and Francesca, who ended up kissing. Francesca has been pretty pushy about it. I mean, she being one of Samira's bosses. I think those two have chemistry. I don't think it's going to last, unfortunately, because I heard rumors that Francesca will be leaving the show in February. Unfortunately, which is one of my gripes with Shortland Street. Their stories move fast, and they sometimes move too fast, and then characters don't stick around long enough. My biggest issue with Shortland Street is that these characters that are interesting don't stick around long enough. We also had, I can't really pronounce her name, Desdemone. We're going to call her Desi because I can't pronounce her name. We saw her at a party, and Lewis was interested in her, but she was interested in Don, and she ended up kissing Don at the party. And then, of course, we have Jack, who's been around for a while. Looks like he's involved with someone who is involved with Curtis's death. So they are keeping Curtis's death around on the main show, despite killing him off on the little spinoff during the break. But overall, I've enjoyed Shortland Street. And like I said, when just comparing it to the rest of these soap operas that don't move, it's like night and day. Yes, sometimes Shortland Street might move too fast, but at least it's moving. At least we're getting places. And at least it keeps the show interesting and even exciting at times. So Shortland Street takes Coronation Street's spot at number one, being the more plot-driven show compared to Coronation Street being the more character-driven show. I've said in the past that I can enjoy both, and I sometimes prefer plot-driven to character-driven. And that seems to be the case right now as we come into the new year for 2022. Shortland Street starts off at number one. Home and Away is coming back, though, finally, from break, the Australian soap opera. I expect Home and Away to be a contender for these top three spots. So going to be interesting to see what comes in January. But for now, I'm giving Shortland Street number one, the best soap opera of January 2022.